Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Tavern Talk. This is episode 1 with season 4. My name is Artenin, and we have Ufnar with us here, and some other folks here in our Zoom portal meeting. This Tavern Talk is designed to talk about all the differences in the 4.0 Myths and Legends Rulebook that just came out, and we're finalizing it right now. So this, again, is going to go through the differences between the previous rulebooks and the current rulebook. We've made some very big changes. And it's not going to go over very specific, detailed items by chapter. Those are going to be later on in later Tavern Talks, which we are scheduling weekly. So first off, let me introduce your other host, Ufnar. Why don't you go ahead and say hello?
Hello.
Ufnar, myself, and Ronan came up with a lot of the mediation. The rule books were changed mostly by vote by the elders and the chief elders, and then the chief elders of each colony approved it, and then the overlords had the task of finalizing and putting it all together. So that's kind of how we work with the rule books. If you haven't seen how LarpCraft works before, players give input to their elders put it in the elder section. We all talk about it as elders, then it gets voted on, then goes to the chief elders, which then they play test it, they scrutinize it a little bit more, and then the overlords put it in the book after everybody's been able to see it. And we do it that way so that there's not just one person writing or dictating to the entire group. It's by the players for the players, but there is a system of protocol of how it goes in. First off, I want to just mention that the Myths and Legends system is a rule set that we try to keep relatively short. We don't want to have 20,000 spells. We don't want to have a million different abilities and make the rule book this thick. We want it to be more about the immersion, about the role play, about the experience, not about I'm the guy with the most skills or I'm the girl with the most skills. So we pick a very unique set of races, classes, and abilities for characters to play on. And then through the LarpCraft tracking system, you are able to modify, put your stories in, put your lore in, write your own journals. Some are private, some are public. Pick your factions, tribes, guilds, travel between colonies, and see all the different games. So we do our best to increase exposure to the worldwide community about live-action roleplay. We do not, bash other systems, of course. Everything is unique, and we encourage other players to play other systems. But this is how we feel the system should be run. LarpCraft is a medium contact live-action roleplay. So what that means is you actually swing swords, you actually do physical combat for those who are comfortable doing that, and those who don't would wear yellow or orange bands. And those bands are just signifying whether or not they want to actually hit somebody or not. Going into chapter 1 of the Myths and Legends system, we have the introduction chapter, and it talks a lot about the system as a whole, how it's played and such. Comes in chapter 2 more so. But some of the things that we did change, it goes through the overview, and we marked the overview of the rules in red so you can see the differences between the last edition and this edition, so it's easier to find what changed. The major changes of the rulebook this time around are the removal of the life bands. We're not going to do the life band system anymore. We're basically going to allow the colonies to dictate how they want to respawn, if there is a respawn site. Usually as we're at a resurrection point, a lot of the chief elders or elders will dictate whether or not they want to have a death scroll or something that manages how many times somebody can resurrect. We did this because now we have professions in the system that the players are reaching a level where they can perform resurrections on their own. They can do major surgeries. They can, heal major wounds. So the players are taking over the roles of the healing and the resurrections, which is how we want to actually do it. The armor system has changed from a global count, global hit to a global count, local hit. And what does that mean? What that means is you want to, you're going to get a very standard set of points that you'll set at registration, and your light, medium, or heavy armors have their point values, and you can mix them. We're not going to go into specifics right now. And basically, the more armor you actually physically have on, the more chance you're going to be able to actually call armor. In the previous system, if I had, let's say, a chest piece on and I got hit in the arm that's unprotected, I could call armor. This is not as immersed as a local hit point system where if I don't have my bracer on and I get hit, I would still lose the arm even though I have armor on. So you actually have to physically wear the armor in order to call armor if it hits the armor. So it's a little bit of an adjustment. It's very much more immersive. And again, the professions that we have in place allow us to fix armors through the blacksmithing, leather crafting, and all that stuff. So it's far more immersive that way. The arrow system, the bow and arrow system, has moved to a two-tier system. Basically, what we wanted to do was come up with a system that allows colonies, and it's totally colonies' choice, and colonies may choose to do tier 1 or tier 2 depending on location, because the tier 2 allows you to use a 50-pound or less bow. Tier 1 is 35 pounds or less. And in the tier 2, the 50-pound or less, you have to use the LARP arrowheads that are approved through LarpCraft. You can't use a homemade arrowhead in tier 2. And again, we'll get more into it in the later on. Introduction of loot chests. Loot chests will be explained later on, but primarily you have a system where all your valuables are kept in a chest between when you go to sleep if you are playing a multi-day game, or you have to leave the game for some unknown reason. You would place your items in a loot chest, because right now most of the medium and high immersion games are still where their tents are off limits, because if your tent is not totally immersed on the inside, it would not be allowed to be used in the game, as it would take away from immersion if you saw on the inside. So to get around people taking in-game coin, quest items, and things out of game when they go to sleep, we came up with the loot chest program. And loot chests can be locked, they can be poisoned, they can be trapped, they can be enchanted. There's a lot of ways to protect your valuables, or hire somebody else that has the profession to protect the valuables. So again, that's a new system that went in place. We introduced quite a few different skills and abilities, and again, with the armor system revamping, we got rid of plus armor, and we added 30 new skills, which is actually 15 different skill levels, and that'll really benefit the fighter classes, the warrior especially, that was having a tough time having enough abilities in their racing or just in that class to level up to a proficiency where it was possibly needed for some of the higher end professions. So we fixed that. The introduction of the Witch Doctor class. Witch Doctors are very unique, and they have a very specific rule set that they follow as it pertains to the abilities that they can do. They don't use arcane magic, they don't use elemental magic, they use the natural surroundings and the life forces that are in those items they use to brew and craft. So it's similar but different in that they have a different set of things that they can do. It's very unique, very fun. The economy system has changed back to the 110 system instead of the 100. So basically, 10 copper equals 1 silver, 10 silver equals 1 gold, instead of the 100 copper equals 1 silver. And we did that because it was an easing of prop requirements for colonies, as well as it was a lot easier for players to carry coin on them. If they had to carry hundreds of coins on them, a lot of our colonies are using, die cast or, actual metal coins, and it becomes very heavy. And when the pouch falls off and you lose all your coin, well, okay, the character's out, but really the people who lose are the colony who invested all the money in those props. So that was one of the biggest deciding factors of going back to the 10 system. Some of the other things here that aren't listed in Chapter 1 that have changed, the rule or the software that we're using to keep track of the skills and abilities is being majorly adjusted, so that way you can earn XP when you log in. There's going to be a lot of different perks and bonuses in the system itself, from having a complete profile, you'll get bonuses to daily logins, to being part of a group, to just a ton of different things. Colonies are going to have their own vaults now instead of just one, experience vault. Each colony is going to be able to actually hand out their mats, and this is going to be very useful for a colony, because you may do some kind of lore writing session or something that doesn't dictate a full-on submission of experience points. So a lot of times colonies will hold that until a big game. Well, that's not really fair to the player, because the player wants to get that XP right away so they can learn the skills they need. So the Colony Vault solves that, where they can instantly hand out their experience and coins. The other thing that changes with that is players are now able to transfer coins and XP between characters. So that's a really big perk, and groups are also going to get some kind of system like that, where a group will be able to collect taxes from players, hand out XP, and that kind of thing. They can't bring it in from an external source like Colony Vaults can, but they can do it between players. So they can still build wealth, value, and power as a group. So that's kind of what has changed in 4.0. It's a lot of stuff, and we're working very hard to make this happen. We are adding a ton of videos as well, and the rulebook revisions have gone through a tweaking system, so you can see how that works. Chief elders have a lot more power, elders have a lot more power, and we want to make it so that it's a voting community. We wanted a democracy in that regard. Again, so that there's not just one dictator over the whole system. Colonies do have a protected area. That did change as well to a little bit different than what it was previously. But you're seeing colonies and regions come on board now, where a bunch of colonies in one region will create an actual full region where they work together. This leads us to an admin called regional coordinator, which is the person responsible for making sure that all the colonies are not scheduling games on top of each other. If there's a potential for gamers to go from colony to colony and game to game. We don't want to cannibalize our own game system if we don't have to. And proper communication is the key to that success. In order to maintain an active colony, you have to submit a game or be active within a 6-month time period. We have so many colonies coming on board now that if you don't host a game or you're not active, you'll go to the inactive colony, so that way there's not so much happening on the tracking system. And as we keep growing, we have things we're looking at doing to make the scrolls easier to find things. If you are overwhelmed already by the scrolls, if you go to the search bar at the top, you can search keywords, and a lot of times we ask our players to make titles of whatever you're actually talking about, put it in the title, so it's easier for the software to search specific items that people are looking for. Okay, so that pretty much takes care of the introduction here. We're going to go into chapter 2, which is core mechanics. And the core mechanics of the system, again, have changed, where the band system has changed. Now, we introduced another band, which is an orange band, or otherwise known as a merchant band. For you, those of you who don't know, the yellow band is in place as a non-physical contact band. It's a band that, let's say, if someone's not comfortable with actual physical combat, we still want them to come in and experience the game. It's not designed for a player to use continually if they have an active character in the realm. It's kind of like an introduction band, or if there's a specific costume that you don't want to get hit. Let's say it's or it's rented, or it's very delicate and that it can't take combat. We would yellow band that character because it still looks neat and we want it in the realm. But where yellow bands have changed is that before you couldn't attack them. Now you can attack them. And basically you just role play what you're doing instead of actually physically contacting them. It's not as immersed, and we ask groups not to do a lot of it, but we need it in place so that characters or players that come in and don't know much about the combat aspect, it makes them feel comfortable coming in and trying the game. So that's kind of how that is differentiated. The orange bands are in place so that you have with the merchants, you can't kill them. They're designed. The merchant band is designed exactly for what it sounds like. You have a vendor coming in, and all they're doing is selling wares, or they have elaborate tents and all these props. And a lot of times they are, they don't want you to screw up or mess up their shop, basically, because it's typically got a lot of stuff in it that you could break glass or all this other stuff. So an orange band, if you see an orange band, you can't attack them even pretend-wise. They're just unkillable, basically. So adjust it for that game, depending on the number of players, how many NPCs they have, what type of NPCs are going to be running. An NPC is simply non-profiled character. It's a pretend character that doesn't have a profile on LarpCraft itself. So we changed it where the solid black is from 25 to 100 XP, intertwined gray and black is from 100 to 250 XP, whereas before it was just like a 50 or 100 or so. Solid gray is 250 to 1,000 XP is what the typical range is. And again, it's explained in the system, and we are coming out with more videos explaining how this works, how to approach monsters, how to approach camps. I mean, we're trying to give as much to the players as we can to get them to understand how to play the game, without actually having to learn it firsthand in the game. They can actually come to a game with some knowledge so that they don't have to sit there and go through all these tutorials for half the game, because nobody likes sitting around if they can get involved and start role-playing. We put quite a bit of information there about hit calling. So there's a lot of combat calls that were usually used in the games already, but it wasn't in the rulebook, so we added those in the rulebook. So if they're, if you're hitting armor, what should you say? If it's a graze, it sliced your costume or something, but it didn't actually touch you, or it hit your weapon or shield and just barely touched you, or didn't touch you, but you hit your clothing. Again, there's a lot of stuff there. Shield hit, 90-degree, a 90-degree hit. So basically, if you just tap, 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 that doesn't count in our system. You actually have to come back and swing the big medieval swords, and in order for them to hit as a count as a hit. It avoids the machine gunning, if you will. The light, if you hit too lightly, like it was like, oh, tap, and it didn't do anything, you can call a light hit. Most people are gonna take a hit, but if it was just not enough, this is immersion, this is role play, and if it barely touched you like a feather, well, it's not going to do anything. Too hard, too fast, and hands and feet. Again, with hands and feet, players who are not sashed, they don't have a game sash on, hands and feet are usually off limits if they're holding a weapon or on the ground. And again, it's explained more in the chapter 2, so please feel free to read it. We did define engaged, because a lot of our rules say when you're engaged, and engaged means when you're in a fight, when you're in battle, when you're being charged with a weapon, can even be considered engaged. So those are some things you want to look at. We talk about how to play death, and we have a lot of. We're going to do another tavern talk on how to actually play death. And after you've been killed, how in character do you play being killed? How do you know who killed you? Do you have amnesia? Usually, you're not supposed to actually know who killed you because you don't remember. Okay, we added some additional wording in chapter 2 about character death and explaining it, how to die, basically, because it's a little bit different now that you don't have a life band and what to do when you're dead. So finding someone who can heal you or resurrect you, and how to role play when you die. There's a lot of discussion going on about how to not metagame and how to, does your character know who killed them after they were slain? Do they remember that part? Most of the colonies and most of the elders kind of are on the same line of, you're probably not going to remember the last 10 minutes of what happened before you died. Now, that's not always the case, but as a general rule of thumb, holding a grudge against someone who killed you 9 times out of 10 is unjustified from a role play aspect, because they're not going to know. Now, that doesn't mean you can't ask your friends. You won't find out eventually. You just may not know right away. So you got to kind of figure out the clues from a role play aspect, even though as a player but as a character you have to try to figure it out, and it really helps the immersion standpoint. We're going to do a whole nother tavern talk just on that subject, and players can weigh in on their thoughts and feelings on it and how they do it.
So to sum up, death at the end of the game is going to be up to the individual colony elders. What that means is some may decide that if you come to the game, especially in a higher immersion, if you happen to die during the game and remain dead until the game's called, you may very well be stuck with permanent death for your character. What that means is your profile will be marked deceased. You'll no longer be able to post in any other scrolls except for our spirit scrolls. And for all intents and purposes, as it implies, your character is dead. Means as a player, you'll have to start a new character, new profile, and start the world anew. Now, on some of your lower immersion games, they may have options for players who have died. And of course, we understand that accidents do happen. Sometimes a player may die, 5 minutes before a game's called. Those will be handled on an individual basis by the elder in charge. But should you be given an option, generally what it's going to be is either they're going to strip you of the XP you would have earned for that game, give you a coin fine, or a combination of the two. In order to keep your character profile alive. Now, it's not taking all the XP off of your profile. That's just basically you didn't earn anything that game. Obviously, you're dead, so you didn't learn anything. If you have or are stuck with permanent death, we do have an option, as we always have, that you can purchase a resurrection through live action products. It's not cheap by any means. It costs $100, and that covers all the admin work to recover your profile. But it's really there. I mean, part of the steep price is a bit of a deterrent for some, especially for some of the more established players who have been playing for years and years. Yes, we know you love your characters, but sometimes the world needs change, and this is to encourage those of us, overlords included, to move on and start life anew. It's a common misconception that the overlords cannot die. That is not true. We are just like any other player. Our profiles turn to
right. That's a good point. Overlords actually in game, they don't mean anything. Just like elders, actually in game, they don't mean anything. They're your referees. So just because they're an overlord or an elder, that doesn't give them any special privileges or perks from a character aspect in the game. So try to remember that when you're playing, but they can't officiate. So if you're doing something wrong or something needs a decision, they're the ones who do that. And just because you pay for a resurrection on live action products doesn't mean you're going to get it. A lot of times they'll be refunded and you won't be able to. The situation and the $100, actually, it's a pretty intensive process. We have to call up the colony elders. We have to go to the chief, and we have to, we have to have a meeting with them to say, can this character come back? You have to create a story that allows you to come back somehow miraculously. So the story still has to make sense. So you can't just pay your way and just be invincible. That wasn't the goal of the game. But extenuating circumstances, we put that in there as a backdoor just so in the event that it has to be brought back or something of that nature, you can pay to bring it back. But it's not easy. And before you pay to bring your character back through live action products, talk to your chief elder, talk to your elders, talk to your colony first, because there's a good chance they're not going to allow it to happen anyway. But so just keep that in mind.
Another really nice aspect of our game is Sash players. Those who have been with the system for a while have a vague idea of what it is, but really there hasn't been a lot of explanation, at least not from a video standpoint, as to what a Sash player actually is. In our system, Sash player is someone who has proven through extensive demonstrations that they are capable of role-playing in a much more advanced combat. For a good example would be such as mock brawling, not actually hitting each other, but putting your dukes up, swinging back and forth, grappling's allowed. Another thing that's really biggest difference between Sash play and regular play is that if you are struck in the head or the groin, the striking person does not automatically die. We tend to try and roll with the hits a lot more. Again, being a Sash player only means that you're willing to take it to the extra level and possibly even take a little bit more punishment. Not intentional, never actually directed at the player, but we all know accidents do happen. Now, just because you are a Sash player does not in any way whatsoever make you elite in our system. Again, I can't stress this enough. All it means is that you have proven that you are capable of responsibly participating in this higher level of roleplay.
And one other thing there, Ufnar, in the bottom of section 2, there is a video example that we were talking about, the first aid skill, but at the end or in the middle part, we actually converted it into how this scenario plays out as a Sash player and as a non-Sash player. So you'll see the level of immersion difference in that video, and it's a really neat training tool that you can show, that you can, you watch yourself and show other players as well. Again, the economy system went to a 10 system, so 10 copper equal to silver, 10 silver equal to gold, and 10 gold equal to gold bar. Now, when you buy skills and when you do things, you only have an experience requirement and a level requirement. And for 4.0, that's all there is. But don't be surprised if in 5.0 for next year that you're going to start to see possibly an economic value to your skills being learned as well. We haven't talked about it yet, but there's a possibility that you may actually have a coin requirement. Or there's going to be a requirement for kingdoms or large groups are going to have to pay in something to justify their being or their wealth or their strength in some way, shape, or form. So a lot of things we're playing with for the next system. We may not incorporate any of that. That may just be something that's a role play, and you may even see some of that role play already starting in the realms and in the outposts and battlegrounds. So a lot of things you can do there from a colony standpoint to increase immersion, to role play, power and wealth. A lot of it was economy driven, so not only and knowledge driven. So those are the things you can play with as a character to really get a better grasp on playing a character. Loot chests at the bottom of chapter 2 again talk about exactly what we talked about before, that it is a way to keep in-game items and keep them in-game while you go out of game, whether it's in your tent or to your camping area that's out of game or whatever, or you have to go take a shower and that's not in-game anymore, that's out, that's the way to handle that. So loot chests typically aren't used in small day games or battleground games. They're commonly found in overnight games or extended outpost games. Check with your colony to make sure to see if they're going to have loot chests And we will be doing videos in the future on how to assemble a loot chest and examples of what all the abilities do. Myths and legends for Chapter 3, we're going to talk about some of the races. Now, we didn't add any races this go-round. Races in general are, it's extremely hard to add a race to a rule set because there's what type of classes, all the professions, all the magics, all what can it do. It's a major right to put a race into a game. And you'll notice that a lot of our beast classes, a lot of our beasts in general will be, you could be a beast, which is kind of a catch-all for like things that we don't actually define, but still gives you some abilities. So that way you can, you could be, what could you be, Ufnar? You could be
a gnoll, you could be a minotaur, a lizard man, you could be, even then you don't even have to stick to actual beast characters. I mean, it could be looked at as anything that's just not one of the other races.
Right. And I mean, you were not going to allow like, you could be the ogre or the troll or whatever, but you couldn't really, act out, oh, I want to be a dragon. All right, well, where's your wings and do you fly? LarpCraft is based on a system where there's still some reality to it, and it's what you see is what you get. So, the mage that's walking up, sure, they're a powerful spellcaster, and you can see that by the amount of mana bands that are hanging off of their belt. You can still visually tell that there's some power there. Obviously, the person coming in full armor, that they're going to have at least 15 hit points if they're in full plate. So players can self-administrate the game, and that's what we like about this. It's faster that way, and there's a lot less cheating and a lot less bickering when it's very simplistic that way. We do add about half races. Now, a lot of folks are like, well, I want to be a human elf mixture, something or other, yada, yada. It has come up enough times to where we put in a note about half races. And so if you're going to do a half race, you have to pick your primary. So you're going to be not just 50-50. It's going to be 60-40 or whatever, 51-49. You got to choose which race you're going to go with, because that's going to dictate what classes you can be, what you can do, and how much you're going to pay for things. So, picking it is there. Now we talked about half races, but you can be half races. We're not trying to limit you. We're trying to be as open as possible while still keeping a protocol for not having things be overpowered. So that's why we put the half race information in there. Beast really didn't change. Draken didn't change much. Dwarf added one-handed cleave. That changed a little bit, where one-handed cleave, it wasn't defined enough where people were like, oh, can I use a dagger to one-handed cleave? No. But you can use a really big one-handed axe and, still cleave with it or whatever. So one-handed cleave was modified a little bit that way. Elf bandanas, what we had to do is, if you didn't have ears, you could wear a bandana. What a lot of people were doing was they were going out to the local department store and buying bandanas like this, where there was a bunch of colors and patterns and all that kind of stuff on it. No. This is not allowed anymore, all right? You can't use bandanas that have patterns on it. You have to have a solid color, and that avoids a lot of community problems where there might be gang problems, or it's not very immersive having this on there, because this would not be anything medieval typically.
I do also want to throw out there is a possibility even that if a higher immersion game may not even allow bandanas for elves as a substitute to ears. Ears
right.
may be required.
So what could you do? What could you do if you didn't have ears? You'd have to wear a hood. You'd have to have a wig or long hair, right?
You would have to do absolutely anything you can to conceal the fact that you don't have those ears.
Right. And that's something you can work with your local colony on. And folks, your colonies are there to help you, and they're there to create games with a lot of immersion, a lot of people, a lot of excitement, and a lot of fun. If you're not having fun, if they're not having fun, it doesn't go anywhere. So as LarpCraft, we provide a system that allows a ton of creativity, a lot of flexibility, and a lot of fun. And each colony is going to do things a little bit different, which is really fun when you go from one colony to the next and you see all the different characters, you see all the different stories, you see all the different stuff. It makes you want to go to different colonies and experience it, knowing that the back core mechanics are all the same. So that kind of stuff really gets me excited when you start talking about the collaboration. And that's a lot of problem that we have with LARP right now, live action role play. There's not a sense of unity enough to where you can get thousands and thousands of people across worlds or colonies or realms or regions or whatever. So the more we can work together on a common ground, the more chances we can get more players, and the more the games will take off and become more immersive, which is the whole point of this thing. Fairies, we really didn't change too much. Fairy Swarm changed XP level a little bit. Humans didn't change much. Orcs, the orc ability, the War Drums is a role play intense ability. That we put that in there. Undead didn't really get any additional abilities. They're pretty powerful in their own right. But
However,
what really happened, yes, is that vampire used to be a sub-race of undead, and we did that just because it didn't really fit anywhere, and we didn't have the storyline done to the point where we could do anything else. In 4.0, however, vampires are no longer undead. Yes, I hope you were sitting for that because otherwise you fell down. Or you've already fallen asleep because I'm talking too much. But vampires have a very unique storyline now. Vampires are immortal, whereas time doesn't touch them, but they are mortal in that you can still kill them. So there's a storyline with it. It's in the rule book. You can read about it. There's going to be a lot more of that in the lore section. We're going to be concentrating a lot on lore this go around in 2014. You're going to see there's world lore now, world lore that a lot of the colonies can base their stuff off of. There's a timeline in place. We're really coming along with structured unity of how the world developed in this fantasy system. Vampires have changed dramatically in that. Again, it's a whole different type of vampire. And before I go into vampire too much, undead have changed also. It's not in red because it was simply deleted. Originally, undead had to be evil. And we took that out. We took undead evilism out. So while their power comes from an unnatural source, that doesn't necessarily mean that the character is evil. And we did that because a lot of times when somebody was tricked into being, or backed into a corner for becoming undead, for following the undead protocol, it wasn't by choice. And it was torture. It was, to save loved ones. It was dramatic, and it was very powerful. So a lot of times when you see an undead character, they're going to be full of emotion. There's going to be, it's unexplainable that they even exist. It's even more unexplainable how they exist. And it's a very role-play intensive race. So if you're really good at role-playing, undead may be something you want to look at. However, even though they're not undead or they're not evil, most characters coming from 3.5 to 4.0 are still going to see undead as major enemies. So becoming an undead, transforming to an undead, doing a character transfer is more likely to happen unless you and your buddies all create a clan of undead where you can hold your own. Undead are very powerful, but they have limitations for running and that kind of thing. They're the decaying, they're the unnatural. So you have to, and the costume requirements are a bit higher. So you got to watch out for that. Going into vampires, there is, again, a story based on Gandalahar. It actually came about from the first world event from Gandalahar, and the storyline actually revealed how vampires were first thought of as undead, but then the storyline says it's actually a plague. It was created from a confrontation between humans and elves and the friction they put between elves and beasts. It's a very unique story. I definitely recommend you check it out. And we'll be actually doing video casts about it because it's really cool how it happened. And we didn't write that lore. That actually came about and happened through the player experiences. And so the lore you're reading is actually from the players at the game that spawned it and made it happen. Vampires and how they change is very explained now. So if you are changed and experience the bite and you're going through vampirism, 9 times out of 10 you don't survive. You die because it's a very traumatic change to the body, and it's not really race specific. It's just most bodies can't handle becoming untouched by time, and that's very much explained in the system. If you do live through the change, you're going to have the ability to become a full vampire. If you become a full vampire, you will be respected as a vampire. You will lose your other racial traits. Let me say that again. You will lose your other racial traits. So while as you may have started as like a barbarian human and you were transferring to the vampire, it's like doing a character transfer in that you're going to lose you're going to be respect. So you can build your vampire as you see fit.
But Artenin, I was a barbarian before, and vampires can't be barbarians.
That is correct. And vampires can't be necromancers anymore either, which is a systematic change. So any vampire necromancers are going to get a free character transfer because that was a system change. Whereas only undead can be a necromancer, which control undead. If you are, again, like say barbarian, if you are a barbarian and you become a full vampire and a vampire can't become a barbarian, your race and class are respect so that you are going to be vampire, but then you have to re-put in what you choose as your class.
Now, Artenin, do I have to pay for this respec?
I don't know. Ufnar, do you?
Unfortunately, there is a lot of admin work that goes on in the process of respecking a character. It's the same as if a regular player just got tired of the current character they played, didn't want to lose all the XP they've amassed over their years of play, and pay for a respec. It's not insanely expensive. Like I said, the fee just goes to cover the administration charges. Now, again, the fee is rather up there, and it's more of a deterrent to a degree. It's not something we want common practice is for players to constantly be bouncing back and forth from one character to another using the same profile. As a matter of fact, we would encourage you to kill off said character and create a new one. Start a whole fresh experience, a whole fresh story, because coming up with a potentially really powerful character from nowhere can be extremely difficult given the lack of lore.
And that brings us to the end of the racial chapter. The vampire abilities didn't change, but that's by not making things evil and separating vampire from undead, that's going to give players a lot more ability to role play a character as they see fit. And we adjusted it based on player feedback, which was brought to the elders, voted on by the elders, brought to the chiefs, okay by the chiefs, and then the overlords have to put it in. So in the 4.0 system, and in the scrolls, you're going to see the 4.0 system doesn't have a specific area for questions. We're trying to take out a lot of the go to a scroll, see the sub-scroll, see another sub-scroll, see another sub-scroll. If we can eliminate some of the sub-scrolls, we'll do that. And look in the scroll, there's a description in the scroll as to how to do anything in that scroll. So like if there's an approval process or that kind of thing, look at that. And we're trying to eliminate a lot of click-throughs, so you don't have to go through as many things to see what you need to see. Trips, I give you props. He put together the quick reference guides and he's going to be doing that through where it's deemed necessary. So if you got to look up a quick section and you don't want to scroll through the entire wording, some of the players like Trips are going to actually are going to make that, and then we'll sticky those so they come up on top before the questions. Or you can post the questions in the quick reference guide, maybe. I don't know. That's going to be to be determined.
I know the guys at the Skills Training Center have already raised their mugs at him for that.
Yes. Hear, hear. Ha ha. Hey, Ufnar, where's your glass? Yeah, all right.
Ah.
So we talk about classes now, and classes got pretty darn exciting. And there's some questions still going around, and we're still fine-tuning some of the things. But overall, Barbarian didn't really change much. But you're going to see the classes section got really big, bigger than it even was before, because now we have to define all of the armor. And each, like, gauntlet, lower arm, upper arm, shoulder, neck, head, we have to define all these areas for the new armor system. So there has to be a point value for each placement of armor to learn these skills. And that's so the fighter classes can progress more. And you have to have the proficiency to wear the type of armor material. So Chapter 4 got a little bit bigger. And we apologize for that. But anything, most of the time, you can go to your class in Chapter 4 and find pretty much all the information you need to know as to what it is that you can do, how much it costs, and what level you have to be to do it. One of the major changes also is most of the abilities, both in the classes, some of the racial stuff, and mostly the classes and a lot of the spells got a big boost in what was required from the mana standpoint. There's going to be more of a mana burn, if you will. So to do the, you got to have mana for casting magic. This is our way of limiting how much magic is in the system or what you can do. The more powerful you are, the more mana you have, the more spells you can do, or the more frequent you can do the lower end spells. And this keeps magic from overpowering the physical melee weapon. So we find it to still work very, very well. And I thank the Averin colony for giving us these wonderful leather mana bands. And was it Frey who made these, Ufnar?
Actually, the ones that we gifted to you were made at a crafting session by our entire colony.
Ooh. So, super high quality, excellent. They sell them on their store. I think we have them on Live Action Products, or we will have them on Live Action Products. I think they even have some tutorials on how to make these yourself if you want to do it as a crafting session as a colony. But really high quality stuff there. And then when you use a mana band, you tuck it in and that kind of stuff. So, but mana limits the amount of magic. And in Chapter 4, you're going to see it, and in Chapter 9, you're going to see it. How much mana does a spell require, or an ability that is of magical nature will have a mana burn. And the mana burns are higher because, again, we're putting emphasis on Chapter 5, which is the professions. You can have mana potions. You can have enchantments. You can have ways to regain your mana more quickly than just meditating. So it's more of a it's a chess game in that regard of, do you have the right stuff to cast your magic and replenish your magic fast enough to survive it? So those are things you got to look at. And again, we're putting a lot of emphasis on professions, not just classes and races. Getting back to Barbarian, Soul Strike was changed a little bit, and we added the ability to unroot others. So Barbarians can unroot themselves. There's a spell called Root, and it's annoying as heck for most who don't know how to spell it or to cast it. And the Barbarian can actually unroot themselves with their massive strength. It's one of the coolest abilities that Barbarians have. Now we've added even a cooler ability which allows them to unroot others. But there's a caveat: they can't be damaged if they're going to unroot others. So, and it's kind of a higher spell. I mean, it's a higher cost. It's not a spell. It's ability. But really, really neat nonetheless. Soul Strike was additionally tweaked a little bit, but for the most part, it's still their most powerful. Basically, Soul Strike can be the difference between winning a battle or losing a battle if you have a barbarian that can do Soul Strike. Bard has a lot of abilities. Their spells, they got some additional spells. They got some tweaking on the amount of XP and level of what it is. There's some additional wording with some of their abilities, but for the most part, it didn't change too much. Most people play off the Bard as, oh gosh, it's a musical thing. Yeah, or they choose Bard as a class, not realizing you actually need some kind of musical talent in most cases to make Bard work from an immersion standpoint. So if you can play the guitar, if you can play the sitar, if you can, whistle or sing or play the flute or whatever the case may be, if you have any musical talent, the Bard was made specifically for those types of players. And it actually requires some level of musical knowledge to do that. And when you bring a Bard in who has musical knowledge, it changes the dynamic of the immersion. And when you see an actual Bard doing Bard type abilities, it's breathtaking, and it can change, the whole party and the whole battle. And I mean, they got a lot of cool, strong abilities. So be sure to check them out if you have some musical talent and you want to play it in your live action role play. Cleric was changed a little bit. There was some additional, what the mana costs are. Resurrection was adjusted down actually for clerics. They got Haven and they got Soulbind. So it's the counter to, I think, what is it, Soul Strike?
Soul Strike, it was the original source for the skill, but it's any insta-death spell.
That pulls your spirit out of your body.
Right.
It basically allows the cleric to say, no, I'm going to staple this soul back to the body. You cannot rip it from its source. So that's something you'll find in LarpCraft is for every ability, there's an equal and opposite disability. So there's something that always counters something else. How it works and where it is, that's something you have to figure out. What your team uses and how it's going to be used, that is the skill that's required in the game. So that's what makes this live action roleplay very unique. It's very balanced. And, when something looks ultra powerful, keep reading. There's things to alter or negate what those powers are.
Another thing I do want to throw out there while you kind of touched on it is you also have to understand that this game was not designed for the solitary hero. Our system as well as our community is built around just that, being a community. We put strong emphasis on parties, on friendships, on socialization between characters. A lot of people will look at our system at mini LARPs and automatically assume, oh, well, they're combat based, and that's their whole interpretation of the system. While it is true we are kind of heavy on the combat side, we really push for roleplay. And another way we found to do that is by really encouraging people to buddy up, so to speak.
Right. A group will be more effective than a single player. And a lot of times your colonies will put together quests and monsters and NPCs that you simply can't do by yourself. And it's done that way on purpose. You have to have camaraderie, you have to have the friendships and the teamwork to develop a strong enough alliance to take out a single target. Or, fight off that evil merchant who seems to be able to do anything. Or just a plethora of different scenarios for that. And again, like Ufnar said, we're roleplay intensive. There's a heavy combat presence, but there's also a heavy non-combat presence. And most people, when they look at the rule set, they're like, wow, there's a lot of combat abilities. Yes, but look past that, there's a lot of other roleplay abilities. You don't ever have to pick up a weapon in this entire game and still have a ton of fun and, progress your character. So we try to make it even. There's a lot for both. So, Death Knight, we didn't do too much with Death Knight. That pretty much stayed the same. We put in some additional mana costs for it. Druid, they are, ultra strong. They can do magic. They can do a lot of different things. We put in some Skin of Wood things, and they got 2 new abilities called Gust of Wind and Nature's Bounty. Gust of Wind is a 10,000 level 10. It allows them to conjure up the wind and do the 5 paces back. And you have to, you're harnessing the wind kind of thing. So it's total blowback. It allows you to, if you're being encroached, it allows you to save your party or yourself by blowing everybody back, literally. Nature's Bounty is 15,000 and level 12. It's a very, very high level ability, but it allows you to self-heal of a mortal wound or all limb hits within a 1-minute period. So very cool. Again, if you want to read more about the abilities, go into the Druid section in Chapter 4 and read about it. It's really neat. Druid, a lot of things were taken away from Druids. They were way overpowered in like 2.5 to 2 to 3.0, and we nerfed them heavily from 3.0 to 3.5. And now 3.5 to 4.0, we're bringing them back a little bit more. So again, based on player feedback, based on the thousands of games that are held every year. Mage is your ultimate magic caster. They have access to almost every spell in the rulebook. Not every, but a lot. And in 3.0 to 3.5, we've changed a lot of the divine magic from being arcane. So they can do a lot of arcane, but the divine healing stuff is saved for clerics and paladins. And likewise, the other healers, now there's other ways to heal. Obviously, you got your physical healers, and you got your priests, or your friars, rather. And other ways, the witch doctor now has some healing abilities. So there's ways to get around the, have to be from a deity kind of thing. Merchant class is new for this 4.0 system. It's very unique, and it actually got finished up just a few hours before this broadcast. The merchant class was designed specifically for somebody who's going to vend at a game, but wants to be a part of the game, not just someone who's vending at the game. So they can still be in character. They can still have a story. They can still be part of the experience, not just, hey, buy my stuff. That is a class in its own, and it has a lot of power to it. But keep in mind that it is designed for those who are vending, who are actually trying to sell goods and services at a game, not just roleplay itself. Now, could you be a merchant and do everything from a roleplay aspect? Yes, you still could do that. But it eats up the class that you could be. So they have more power in that regard because they lose so much because they can't do anything class-wise otherwise. It's almost like a glorified profession, but we had to make it a class.
It's even more than that. If you actually take the time to look at the abilities, the merchant really is – the merchant class is going to be different than your typical blacksmith selling his wares, or even your typical shop owner. A merchant is someone who has developed a bit of a silver tongue. It's quite a natural salesman. It's really hard to describe without reading some of the abilities.
Yeah, they have some really unique, and a lot of it is magic-based because it's like they take control of the people that they're selling to. It's really fun to see some of these abilities. And it is very unique in that these abilities are unlike any other. And we had an original set of abilities, and we scrapped them because we really wanted to come up with something that was very much for a vendor that could be used as an instance in a game while they're actually selling physical or other wares, physical or services. So take a look at that. The merchant class, it's really neat. It's new. We're excited to have it. And we wanted to give our merchants something that they could actually stay in character with. Necromancer didn't change too much. They lost the ability to do one ability, which is the seventh shadow magic, which is hypnosis, because shadow magic hypnosis was exactly the same as the earth hypnosis, and it was redundant. So we took it out. Will we replace it? Yes, we will replace it, but not in this rule book. It'll be left up to the players, elders, and chiefs to come up with a unique shadow magic ability for that. It also has some mana burns that were added as well. Next up, we have the paladins. And for paladins, not too much has changed. We put the mana burns in for their abilities, and we gave them the deity health rejuvenation. We had some paladins complain, and I'm not one of them. My character's paladin, so usually anything that has to do with the paladin ability, I don't even talk about because I'm too close to the project when it comes to paladin. So I don't usually voice my opinion in those cases. And you'll notice that most of the overlords and chiefs and elders will do the same thing. As if their actual character is that race or class, they won't chime in on it because they're too close to that race or class, and they'll be biased. But we gave them a unique ability called Deity Health Rejuvenation. And that's kind of wordy. It may change a little bit with words for 5.0, but for the most part, it's a really unique ability that paladins have that nobody else has. And it allows them to plead to their deity. And that, when we say deity, it doesn't mean you have to be of the light or of a holy nature. It can be a deity. We have a very specific approved set of gods in LarpCraft that are not based on anything real or Greek or any of that nature. So you plead to your deity after 10-second incantation. The deity grants the paladin a battle miracle. This is the first time we use the word miracle because there's no other way to describe what this is doing. After about 20 seconds, it reverses the effect of a hit. So when somebody hits the paladin, it actually heals them. It doesn't take damage. It doesn't give them damage. So it actually can, it's a last-ditch effort for a paladin to make their glorious stance or seek reinforcement for another battle. Typically, your paladins don't back away from a fight very easily, but in most cases, you can save your skin and reinforce yourself and come back with a stronger number. You may have started hacking away at some NPC and didn't realize, oh crap, they're a 4 gray band that's all tied together. So, it's literally a level 40 NPC. They're going to have like 40 hit points at least. So a paladin, oops, my bad, starts getting really wailed on. They cast this, give themselves a chance to reinforce, report, get into the lore, get into the story, collectively get their team together and attack the target. Or figure out some way to attack the target. And I'm digressing a little bit, but to defeat an enemy, a lot of times your colonies aren't going to make it a physical battle. It has to be a battle that's fought by some quest, or an NPC has the keys to unlock this whatever for this or that. So a lot of times a big baddie can be taken down in a whole different way, or it's the only way you can take it down. So as elders, as chief elders, we talk a lot about that on the game aspect, and we share a lot of our ideas and stories to make the game as fun and immersive for you, the player. Sorry, I got off a little bit there, but Ranger also got a little bit here in the Ranger abilities. They got 3 new abilities, or they were changed. Endurance of the Bear, One with Nature, and Untraceable. Ufnar, do you want to elaborate on the Ranger abilities a little bit?
Sure. Endurance of the Bear is really nifty. A lot of people have said over not just 3.0, but even with 2.5, that they felt the Rangers were really underpowered. What Endurance of the Bear does is it allows the Ranger to completely ignore 1 mortal wound hit. It's a limit. It does have a bit of a limit, but still being able to just walk away from a mortal hit could easily spell the difference in a battle. Another one is One with Nature, allows the ranger to ignore any one spell magic cast on them per battle, whereas a barbarian can grab his leg and rip it up if hit with a root spell. A ranger can just outright ignore it. It could be, but it's not limited just to root like with the barbarian. It could be, again, any earth magic spell. And it does not have a mana cast to use this ability. You can use it once per battle and just keep trucking. Their untraceable ability, this is actually a shared ability between them and the rogue, which we're fixing to step into as well. Untraceable allows rangers to go completely undetected from our tracking skills, such as namesake tracking, scenting, or the elf's racial night vision. Now, you can still be physically seen. This doesn't literally render you invisible, but it does mean that if you're out of sight and someone's calling out tracking, you no longer have to respond. Another thing that rangers and rogues got is they both have access to some unique loot chest abilities that we'll touch base on a little bit once we get into the professions. As far as Rogue goes, Rogue likewise got quite a few new abilities. Again, the shared ability, it has a slightly different name, but it's essentially the same ability as the Rogue Sneak. But one thing we did do is we split up the Rogue's dual wield. Now, low-level Rogues can get really early access. Level 1's only 3,500 XP. Gives them the ability to dual wield up to a pair of short one-handed weapons. This is a one-handed weapon that is 32 inches or less in total length. And as they get into a higher level, right at level 8 for an additional 8,500 XP, they can dual wield any weapon they have up to bastard length, which is under 45 inches. And again, they also get access to a couple unique loot chest abilities. With the warrior class, we did a little bit of clarification on a couple abilities, but other than that, they really didn't get too much of a change. Artena, you want to go ahead and give an overview of our brand new class, the Witch Doctor?
Sure, no problem, Mufnar. Witch Doctor was introduced because there was a tribal imbalance for making them do cleric or other type of class abilities that really weren't an immersive, conjunction with their like orc or tribal type races. So we wanted to come up with some kind of class that was more fit for a tribal healer, or not really a spellcaster, but something that was more tribal. And Witch Doctor was something that most people understand. When you say Witch Doctor, they kind of get an idea that it's a voodoo or something that has to do with unnaturals, but they can perform these really, really cool and unique abilities. So,
what's the difference between a Witch Doctor and a cleric?
Witch Doctor is totally different from cleric, even though they have some similar attributes. They don't actually perform their type of abilities with the same type of materials or magic, if you will. They're going to do more of a ritual standpoint. They got totems. They have, and a totem is more like your hand-based totem. We don't actually put a lot of totem stuff on the ground type totems like World of Warcraft or other video games, because they can be a trip hazard, and the props that you make can be, take a long time to make, and you can damage them very easily if they're on the ground. So from a standpoint, they got them in their hands most of the time. But the Witch Doctor brings Witch Doctor has an understanding that everything that is in existence has some sort of, for lack of a better word, life force. there is a essence that they can pull from it, if you will. And that's what the witch doctor really specializes in. Is they're a crafter that takes kind of the supernatural and the elemental and kind of combines it with a nature aspect that says you can pull apart, if you will, the DNA of something and use it to their advantage. So very, very unique in our system. They do have some weapon abilities, but again, they're more of a crafter conjurer, so they're not your big warrior type. You're not going to see a witch doctor out there in full plate most of the time at all, actually. And if you do have, they can go to medium armor, but it's very expensive for a witch doctor because it's kind of a cross-class ability. And saying that, you're going to notice some things in the class section where the XP value is just off the charts. And that's because we consider that a cross-class. So if you're doing something that isn't natural to your actual race or class, but it's still there, but it's at a almost unattainable XP or level value, that's because we want it to be there so you can do it, but we discourage it with that because it's considered cross-class. Witch doctor abilities, they do have the ability to do, kind of what a cleric or a friar does, but they can do some very unique abilities as well. They got, the regeneration, the seance, the lifeblood, and they're like your healing spells in a different way, shape, or form. To go into the specifics of what the witch doctor can do, please go into the chapter 4, and it's about almost all the way to the bottom because it's the W. We got it alphabetical, and you can see exactly how to do something. And in later Tavern Talks, you'll see we're going to do these more detailed per chapter. But they have really, really neat abilities. And not only do they have abilities, they have curses. So it's kind of like putting a profession piggybacked on a class. Witch doctor kind of gives you both of those a little bit. Now they do have considerable drawbacks in weapon and armor and melee, but they definitely make up for it in the amount of things that they can do from a curse and class ability standpoint. And you'll notice that a lot of the actual things that are in Witch Doctor are very described. We're doing a much better job now of putting together a lot of descriptions for the things that are actually happening and trying to provide examples for players so that they know how to actually do it. And we're going to do that more with words, and we're going to do that a lot more with videos to give proper examples of how to play it so a player can come in as a character and do it properly.
Another thing you will notice about the Witch Doctor is when you're scrolling through the class abilities, you'll see they have more class abilities than any other class. But with that said, they're also the only spellcasters, and I'm using that in a very loose term. They do not have access to any of the elemental spells. All of their magic is through their unique abilities.
Yes. And so again, they're very unique and they can do a lot of things, but there's a lot of things they can't do. So you got to be very careful before you would transfer your character into a Witch Doctor class if you've been playing for a while, and if it seems like the newest greatest thing, be careful that you may lose some of the ability to do the other things if you jump into the Witch Doctor class. But for your tribals, this is a perfect fit for a lot of your shamans and your tribals that are your support characters, and it makes a very, very good fit. Again, much based off of the player feedback we got through the last few years, and we tried to figure out a good way to make that happen in a role play intensive and not too complex way. So that's the guts of the system. Chapter 4 of the classes, that's really you can look at that and pretty much see what's going to happen with the rest of 4.0. So it is dictating as to what you can and can't do as that class. Chapter 5 is professions, and if you go into the profession side, there is a number of things that are just absolutely unique, and we do a good job. We try to do a good job of explaining everything, and you can actually do 4 professions. So, before in 3.0 you could do 1, or 3.5, or what was before that? I get which version is which, but you could only do 1 profession at first. Then we opened it up so you could do multiple professions, and each profession after your first one is substantially higher XP cost to learn secondary skills. You can go up to 4 now. You can go up to 4 professions you can learn. There are common skill professions, and we did add loot chests to the common skill professions because everybody can do them. Everybody can have a loot chest. Everybody can lock it and trap it. You are able to disarm them and, poison, unpoison, enchant, disenchant. For every thing that you can do, but they also got the ability to sunder a shield. So they can basically do a sunder shield ability, which, just massive attack, destroy the shield no matter what. It's a super high level ability. And when you see some of these XP values, you're like, why do they put them that high? Well, folks, we want this game to, again, not be 10,000 different skills. We want this to be a rule book that people can get their head around, new players can get into, and players that have been in the game can experience for years and years. We're about the immersion. We're about the role play. We're not about 10,000 skills in a rule book that's this thick. If you want that, go to a different game set where it can be massively confusing in some instances. But our rule set is very easy to understand the core mechanics of. And, that's why when you see, XP to learn, 45,000, whoa, you may save up an entire season or even 2 seasons to get that one ability. Yeah. I mean, it's not about what you have. It's how well you can use what you have. So, we put a lot more emphasis on the role play and usability. And going with that, you'll see a lot of high-level players. It's very interesting. You see a lot of high-level players with a lot of abilities, especially mages, and they'll use maybe 5 spells. They're the ones that they're most comfortable with. They understand the most. They feel that it would work best in the scenario they're in. So even if we have all these different abilities, a lot of times they're not going to be skilled in all these things and just cast all this stuff. They're going to pick a very specific set that works with their team or works against the enemy that they're fighting. Ufnar, do you have something on that?
I was just going to say, that's one of the things we encourage is to it's character progression over years of play. We don't want somebody coming in and expect to be, level 20 inside their first year. Many of us have been playing this game for a very long time now, and it's not so much about leveling up your character, getting as many achievements as you can or as many levels as you can. It's about the role play. It's about the story, the saga that you are forging as that character.
Yep, very much so. And we got to thank Ufnar for coming up. He's really come into his own. He's coming into a game that, he's bringing his group from low immersion to high immersion or medium immersion. He was never even low immersion. And doing a lot of promoting in his St. Louis area. And I asked him, wouldn't it be cool if we did some tutorials as your character? Do it in character. And I'm like, people are sick of seeing me. Let's see you. Let's do something different that you haven't seen before. Let's get some orcs on the portal and show our diversity. So in chapter 6, you'll see that's one of the first things you see is in the weapons section of how to apply for an ability. You'll actually see Ufnar showcasing his first attempts at doing some skills training, and he's going to do more. And some of the other colonies are also volunteering to do some tutorial videos, and then we edit them all together, or they do it, or whatever. As long as it's good for the player, that's what we concentrate on, and we throw it on the LarpCraft channel for YouTube or in the scrolls. Weapons did get a little bit of a tweak. Two-handed weapon, at least 45 inches, but less than 59 inches. That wasn't totally defined. Throwing weapons were a little bit different, but for the most part, the only thing we really changed was the bows and crossbows to a two-tier system. And again, bows were changed, and we want archers to be able to hit a target safely from a further distance so that they're more deadly. If you look at history and you look at, I know we have to loosely base this stuff because we are a fantasy-based system, but from a medieval standpoint, an archer was one of the most deadly pieces of arsenal that a army could have. And we really didn't see that much with live-action roleplay when you're using a 15-pound bow and you're shooting these, gigantic heads, and they weren't going anywhere but 20 feet away. Sure, they may be safe, or you got the European styles where they're rubber heads, and you could literally kill somebody with a 20-pound bow. We didn't want that either. So we tried to come up with a system where it was up to the colony to, if they felt comfortable doing so, to move to a higher poundage bow. And we used the LarpCraft approved arrowheads, which will be listed in the rulebook. Right now, Live Action Products has one that we developed over the last 4 years, but there's others that could definitely do it if they're brought to the market. But what we want to do is have it so that archers can shoot from a further distance away at a high accuracy, safely, and hit the target from a distance where, okay, they missed, they're being charged by 3 people, they can still bring out their weapon and engage. Right now, with the low pound bow and some of these bigger heads, or even some of the smaller heads, the low pound bows are a detriment to the archer immersion. And we wanted to get around that. And we spent the last 4 years coming up with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of trial and error to make this happen. So we came up with a 2-tier system. And a lot of colonies may not even try it their first year because this is totally new to them. And we've been actually experimenting with this for the last 2 years because, it's a big change. To be able to use a 50-pound bow you could use a super low-powered recurve right out of the box. To use a full wooden bow without it being PVC, from an immersion standpoint, that is awesome. From a safety aspect, there's some things you have to watch out for, though, with the 2-tier system. Tier 1, 35-pound, that's just about what everybody else has. Homemade arrowheads are allowed. Your PVC bows, that kind of thing is going to be allowed. So basically, not too much changes with the Tier 1 system. And your colony is going to, all you have to do is ask your colony for a game, are you using the Tier 2 bow system? If they aren't, for the most part, nothing changes from 3.5. Tier 2 allows you to use up to a 50-pound bow, but you have to be 20 paces away before you fire at somebody. A lot of rule sets will allow you to do a half draw, and we're trying to get away from that from an archer standpoint. We added some abilities, though, that allow you to stab with an arrowhead that allows an archer to use close combat in the event they got snuck up on or they're in full draw. We do not want an archer to do half draw. If somebody comes in front of them at an unsafe distance, half draw can still cause injury. And so we don't want that to happen at all. This is something we've done a lot of research on, and it's kind of a major pain in the butt to do archery because you either have lots of great immersion and high risk, or you have a safer system with bows that are really not effective, archers that are kind of lame in that regard. So we met in the middle with what we think is a very good system that meets both needs. But again, the colony decides what they're comfortable with. So that system, the major details of it are listed in the weapons section And if you have any additional questions, ask us or ask on the scrolls about it, and your elders will be happy to help you as well. Arrow stab was the other ability we talked about. With a homemade arrowhead or whatever, we don't want arrows that have shafts that are not aluminum. And this is one of the major drawbacks of the arrow stab, is you couldn't do an arrow stab ability, because if you stab somebody with an arrow even lightly, if you broke the shaft of a carbon fiber, fiberglass, wood, or composite shaft, it could literally still stab them. So you don't see many systems with an arrow stab ability, because they're using fiberglass and all the other shafts that aren't allowed. We are going to strictly aluminum. You have to use aluminum. Yes, they bend, but guess what, folks? They bend back. You can actually bend an arrowhead back. We're not shooting at 300 yards, folks. Archers, you have to get into the realization that the shaft is a safety concern, all right? So we want to go with all aluminum, because an aluminum, even shaft that breaks off, typically won't break at a shatter point where it could be lethal to somebody. Our goal here is player safety, and we wanted to introduce the two-tier system so that they can be more deadly at a longer range. Arrow stab, if you're caught, you can still stab somebody with the arrow. Again, end of weapon section, chapter 6, you'll see how that works. I explained it in detail because there was a lot of scrutiny and a lot of differentiation between the elders and the colonies on how this would work. It is a safety factor, and we want to have anybody within tier 1 archer range at 15 paces. If you're in front or closer than 15 paces, we don't want an archer to fire, even at half draw. With a tier 2, you got to be at least 20 paces. Why don't we use feet? Why don't we use the metric system? Because paces are easy for players to self-enforce. You walk 20 paces. Okay, that is what it is. You know, the live-action product arrowhead with a 41-pound bow, you're at an effective range of 63 paces. So 20 paces really isn't all that big of a deal. 25 or 30-pound bow, again, with a 1.5-ounce arrow tip, you're still at 35 to 40 paces. You need 15 paces to fire. So again, we've done a lot of science on this. We try to really keep our players safe. We don't want you to half fire if it's within the 15 paces on a tier 1 system. So please be aware of that. Moving along to chapter 7. The armor system. That changed a lot. The armor system for 4.0, we lost the ability to do plus armor. But in losing the plus armor ability, basically we lost one ability, and we gained a whole lot more abilities. 30 to be exact. You guys hear me okay yet? Ufnar shut off his mic, so I'm like making sure my headset still works here. Okay. So again, global armor point system and local hit point. So there's a lot of explanation in there. We'll get into a lot of the details in that armor section as to how it's played out. Armor safety pretty much stays the same. Armor locations did change. We added some additional locations. We value the armor system. We value the crafting. You know, the additional armor coverage had to be addressed in the system. So we had to add a bunch of different parts of the body that were covered, skills that were required to cover them, and was it light, medium, or heavy armor that covers it. So you can look that up in the system. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Chainmail is unique, as it can be worn as a primary torso armor or combined with other armors. So you can put plate over the top of chainmail, which gives you a +2 on top of your 15 armor set. So you have 17. points of armor. But chainmail is unique in that it's flexible. And where it really was beneficial back in the good old days, it is beneficial in this system as well, in that it's very flexible. A lot of times it's still heavy, but it allows you to cover a lot of the exposed area of your body without 25 or 30 different pieces. So we've gone to a system that's very chainmail friendly, if you will. And a lot of folks are looking at chainmail because it is the best bang for the buck when it comes to coverage. Go to chapter 8. This is really great for a lot of folks who've been asking this for a while. We did add from the shield, we had the small, medium, and large. We added the ultra small, which is the buckler. We added a cleave point value of 1 to buckler, up to 14 inches from edge to edge. And a buckler can be hand-held or strapped to an arm. What? Yes, it can be strapped to an arm. So you can have a buckler because it's only 14 inches. You can strap it to your arm and still wield a weapon. That's pretty cool. They asked, can you do it with can you have a shield on both arms? The only way you could really do that it's not very well defined. Warriors have the ability to dual shield, have one on your back and one on your arm. It would be up to the colony at this point because we're still looking at it, but most colonies would allow you to have dual buckler shields, again, 1 cleave point value, on your arms if you're a warrior, because they can technically wear 2 shields. Right now it states that you have to have it on your back, but we're still looking at that. So that's something we're still going to probably tweak a little bit before we go. But other than that, shields really didn't change all that much. I mean, they're shields. What is the ultimate defense against an archer? Shields. So if you have a lot of archers in your system, be sure to pick a class that can wield a shield. I'm not reading a lot of the commentary, but we will open this whole session up for commentary and questions at the end of the Tavern Talk like we usually do. Chapter 9 is spells. We did take out, from 3.5, Chapter 9 was roleplay questing examples, and we took that out because we put it in the additional information that we can post with videos and for the Elder section. We made the actual core rulebook smaller in that Chapter 9 is now just the spells. We made it the core mechanics of the system. So with Chapter 9, you're going to notice some, we didn't really add too much from an ability standpoint. If a caster accidentally grabs the wrong spell color orb, the spell is not counted. So if you have somebody who's going to throw a root and they grab a fire and they throw a red orb when it should be green, you don't have to count that hit because they literally cast the wrong orb. They cast the wrong magic. There was even talk of saying, well, if the caster casts the wrong magic, they should die, like implodes on them, which can be done from a roleplay aspect. From the rule standpoint, we didn't put that in. Spells can be blocked with a shield if it says blockable. If it's unblockable, it still can't be blocked with a shield, but it can be blocked with spell block. So there is a way to get around blockable spells, or unblockable spells rather, if you have the ability to do spell block. Again, we build the system so that there's an opposite for everything that's in the game, if we can. And I think we have an opposite for everything. Weapon channeling, everything else stay the same. Elements are the same. We have Shadow, Arcane, Earth, Water, Fire. There's some general spells that almost everybody can do. And we put that in there so most classes can do at least a blocking type of spell, unless it totally doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit and it's cross-class, usually it's a ridiculous amount of XP or level to get it, but it's still there nonetheless. The spells of LarpCraft, again, this has been we've gone through this over the last 5 years, trying to come up with a good 8 to 12 spells per element, but not to overdo each element so that way it's, oh my gosh, there's 50 spells in Arcane. We don't want that. And if we do change some of the spells around, from here on out, folks, usually what it's going to mean is if we put a new spell in, we're going to take an old spell out. And that's going to be by who has or who applied for that spell. We can track that on the back of the tracking system. And if it's not something that's being used, players are telling us that's not something they value. So we're going to put something in that they do value. Reckoning got some, basically all the spells got a little bit of touching in that they can, they're better defined as to whether what they do, or they got a little bit more description to it. And we put a incantation and a mana burn, a usage of mana for each spell. Originally in 4.0 we didn't have that, but we did add that because we put such a high mana cost, or what's seemingly high mana cost, in the class section for some of the class abilities. And then people were like, well, a lot of these magics are one magic or one mana, but they do a lot more damage than what the class is. And we're like, oh yeah, we should probably take a look at that. So we adjusted that and made it sync with the class abilities. We have a support center now where you can send support tickets in if you don't feel comfortable putting it in scrolls. One of the overlords or admin staff will privately message you. You can private message myself, or Tenon, Ufnar, or Ronan, Nick Finley, and we will be able to assist you personally. Again, not in the public scrolls. Again, the XP system is changing a little bit, and the ability to players will have more ability to transfer things, anything that's economy based or even experience. You can give somebody experience that you deem fit. So we did a lot of work, and I thank all the overlords. I thank all of the elders and the chiefs who have just done a dynamite job creating the 4.0 system, and together we're really making headway on developing live action role play for the masses and getting them exposed. And whether they come into the system or leave the system or whatever, they are live action role playing. They are LARPing, and that is important to all of us. So if you have any questions, post it below the video. Go to the scrolls.larpcraft.com. That's the medieval myths and legends system. Post it there if you wish. There are just a lot of different how-to guides, how to make stuff, how to craft stuff, how to start games. It's a very supportive community, and it has grown exponentially. It has doubled in the last 6 months, and actually less than 6 months, like 5 months or 4.5 months. And we're just seeing a tremendous amount of traffic on the LarpCraft site. So, and we're there to help you. We're a community that's very active and together as a whole. So with that, we will open it up. So if anybody has any questions, they can definitely ask them. Those who are in the conversation right now, you can unmute your microphones, and we'll go to the proactive part of our tavern talk. Everybody's like, whoa, he's done talking. What? I mean, that was a lot to cover in a tavern talk. That's a 2-hour tavern talk. That's a lot. Typically, they won't be that long, but.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was a good tavern talk. Trying to jump in late.
So I muted everybody. If you want to remute yourself, you can. If you don't feel comfortable talking, that's fine. But if you want to ask questions, feel free to do so at this time.
Wait, when did I unmute myself?
You didn't. I did.
Oh.
I hit unmute all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you want to remute yourself, you definitely can.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Rock.
In a group fight, how does a witch doctor designate a target for if he doesn't use spell balls?
What does it say in the rulebook?
I didn't think it said anything.
Let's take a look. So we're going to go to chapter 4. We're going to jump to the bottom of chapter 4, which is which doctor.
What's the question?
A lot of the witch doctor abilities are touch or seance style, where they're performing it on somebody or doing something. So it is perceived that it's a touch or near proximity type of event.
All right.
Didn't we clarify that? I thought we did.
Take a look. Go to the end of chapter 4 and let's just take a gander.
Looking at it right now.
Rod, can you pick out a specific example that you may have a question on?
Yeah. All right, let's see. The curses. It doesn't say if it's a touch or anything.
Well, if you go up to the top of the witch doctors are unique in that their magic is cast by performing a ritual with their totem rather than by charging the spell lord. Blah, blah, blah. To do this, the witch doctor must say an incantation that includes both the name of the ability as well as shout the name of the target you're casting the spell on. Your target must also be within earshot.
All right.
So
Better
basically,
know who it is you're casting on.
So what if I'm casting on an NPC? I'm probably not going to know their name.
You could describe
Like
them.
a random bandit. All right.
Or roll up and reach out, touch me.
Whack them with my whip.
Couldn't help there. It was there.
Now I'm going to take a momentary break if you want to take over as host here for a moment. We're just asking questions about anything anybody had.
no problem. So I see he stops talking and suddenly nobody has anything to ask, huh?
I'm just reloading.
I've been listening for 2 hours. I'm kind of shocked. All the questions I had now, I've forgotten.
Oh, for if somebody uses the wrong spell pack when casting a spell, does that use a mana then also?
I would think so. It's kind of a backfired spell.
All right.
That's how I would call it. I mean, really, that's actually a really good question, and I'd almost want to discuss it with the other overlords first. But, well, hell, we're all elders here. I mean, how would you handle it? What would be your call?
I'd say it was a mana. Or, I mean, I'd say they used what they would have used to cast the spell they're trying to cast. But, I mean, they failed. So...
Yeah, I mean that's essentially how it would play out in my head. Would be it's just a backfired spell, or I guess backfire is actually a bad term because that implies that the effect hits you.
Yeah.
So it would be a fizzled spell to a fizzled spell.
Fizzled spell, or just misfired as opposed to backfired. Yeah, there you go. So I take it you hit Mike.
Or he doesn't like us.
Yeah, he's afraid to let the voice of his carry on.
Oh, and Lufgar, congratulations on the new pup.
Thank you.
Let's see. A question. All the ones I can't think of now when I had in my head are there.
Yeah, he doesn't pause to breathe much, so it's kind of hard to stop him. There were a couple points I wanted to try and interject, and he just kept going, and I'm like, shut up.
He doesn't breathe. He just absorbs it through his skin.
Yeah, rumor has it paladins don't breathe. Just putting that out there. They can blab all day and not breathe.
So are you going to be sad to let both of your blades go?
both my blades.
Yeah, you have to choose one. There can only be
Yeah, a little bit, but my bastard is pretty hard hitting. So I'll probably just sell it to somebody, or I'll keep it and then use it for NPC rolls, or until I get the 10,000 XP to get bastard.
What are you eating?
That's loud. Stop chewing on the chalkboard.
It's just coming off the window. No, it sounds all good and cool to me. I didn't even know the apocalyptic doom horn existed until just now. I should have known now there's a spell, apocalyptic doom. And
Dude, that's why we were freaking out at Esker when they were talking about
Yeah.
that.
I was getting a little bit scary. I was kind of afraid for my
Yeah,
character.
because if somebody had gotten a hold of the horn that could actually cast apocalyptic doom,
Yeah.
all dead. Everybody in that place.
Everyone that could hear it dies. So pretty much everyone in the realm probably could have heard it, so they would have died.
Oh, dude, those horns carried weight.
I know.
Just wait. Man.
Stop telling them just wait, man, or they're going to be expecting something big.
Yeah, Esker's gonna be pretty big.
Yeah.
Esker's is going to be fun.
Oh, you have no
Advise
idea.
everyone to go.
Yes. Save your pennies now so that maybe you can afford a ticket.
Everyone that could ever have possibly thought of going should go.
Yeah, even if you're just on the fence about it, you're like, I want to, but I'm not sure.
Just do it.
Screw it, go.
Look at the pictures of your camp. Decide to come. That's simple.
Dude, it doesn't take that long to fill up your tankard. Come on.
You have no idea. He's probably drinking out of it while he's filling it.
Many of the questions and problems people perceive with high-end spells I can solve with the do you have the spell ability? Has anyone used this on you? I'll give you that. That's probably something else that we're going to expand. I know Ryan had started to do or our tenant had started to do a magic tutorial. He and Odin did a while back.
Yeah.
What they didn't do, and I think what we're going to do with 4.0 is we're actually going to do some videos with examples of the different spells and how one should role play out each ability.
Yeah, that was originally always on the docket to do that, to give players an idea of how each spell is cast ideally, so they could emulate that but put their own twist on it.
And also how it affects the target.
Yeah. Right, and that is definitely something that's needed that we really want to do for 4.0. And there's just a lot, oh my gosh. There's so many videos we have to make, and we really are video intensive, and we value it. It's the reason LarpCraft even exists, is because our videos are everywhere.
Yeah, you know how bad it frustrates me that I don't have anybody I can shoot videos with here.
Yes, I do understand that.
Are you still recording?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I use this, but
I would hope
How
not.
about the little red recording thing in the left-hand side?
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention.
Put your hands up.
Well, I know you would play dummy for us, dude. It was a blast having you up. I can't wait till you guys can come back up. I actually want to get with you and the other two new colonies, so that when it does come time for regional games, I want to try and host them specifically because I'm 4 hours from everybody. I am like ground zero.
Armstrong 04, is that Skylab?
That is Skylab. He changed his name. You didn't know that?
No.
No longer Skylab. He's Armstrong.
Well, that makes more sense.
I think it fits better.
No Armstrong?
Absolutely, because you say Skylab and my brain goes to Skynet, and I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah, good job. Way to change it.
Yeah, we are trying to figure that cop thing out. We're looking at a new location. We are working with our tenant and some of the other promoters on trying to set up how exactly individual colonies can partake of the LarpCraft insurance. We want to actually get a policy in place for that. I mean, right now, as the policy stands, we all have access to it. But what we want to do is lower the cost overall. Because what people don't realize is our tenant's the one fitting the bill for it, outright, out of his own pocket. Yeah, that's what we were discussing. It's about
Yeah, it was kind of the loose end of what it could or should cost. Basically, the only one who partook in it besides myself was Grey Corps, because the Midland Colony needed it for Dane County Parks to allow them to do all the things that they do. So, and we didn't have a set cost at first. I'm like, here's my bill, man. Help out in whatever way you can. We needed it for our game, so.
Yeah, and we're buying in as well because we absolutely are going to need it. We're looking for that campground so that we can do multi-day events, because I think, especially in your guys' case, if you're going to travel for 4 hours to come play a game with us, least we could do is let you stay the night.
Yeah. And those are some things we talk about too, that we're trying to post more of that in the elder section, the chief elder section, of how to find game locations, what you do with landowners, how to react with landowners, what things they're going to look for, like insurance and waivers and safety protocols and blah, blah, blah. So that when you come to a landowner, you don't look like some total nut job in costume all the time, blah, blah, blah. You're an actual event promoter. You're a business owner, or you're a club who's got a reputable, safety record, and you don't want anybody getting hurt. You don't want a lot of that weirdo stuff. You're here to play a game. It's no different than trying to play volleyball or softball or baseball or anything else. This is just a different type of game. So once you can get that point across to a landowner, then it's usually no big deal.
Yeah, that's the hard part, though, Ryan, is getting them to understand that what we're doing is essentially a sport.
Right. And that is their first 30 seconds of looking at you while you approach them is going to dictate whatever you say. It doesn't matter. They're going to judge you. They judge a book by cover. So,
Probably showing up in kit would not be the best.
No, definitely not.
Or kit.
Definitely not. You're going to definitely want to be a normal human being that looks responsible and, shoulders high, standing up straight, can look them in the eye, isn't shifty or looking down, or that kind of stuff really plays a big part with landowners, because they have no other way to judge you. They have no other way of knowing if you're the real deal, or if you're truly in it to help people, get out into the outdoors and experience nature and that kind of stuff. When you start using that kind of terminology, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. But if you're just a bunch of gamers who are looking for this weird thing that you do, they're not going to get it. They won't understand the game, and you don't try to make them understand the game. Using keywords like getting people off computers, getting them off their couches, getting them into the outdoors, getting them active, being a community service, saying stuff like that. Oh, sure, they get that. Sure, it sounds a little infomercial-ish, but a lot of landowners don't do this stuff, so they won't get it any other way.
He just posted, I'm kind of stuck in breaching the ground on using a public park charging money for the event and promoting that same event on a public place. Says he would hate to lose his location by trying to expand it, and that he needs to do more research into his local area. They says he's used community outreach, cleaning up the park for one of their events, and it went over really well. My advice to you, man, I mean, I've seen some photos of your guys' park, and you aren't that far from LBL. I know LBL has some great, great trails and a lot of primitive campsites, but I know it could also get pretty expensive going there, and they do tend to get pretty booked during the summer. I've told you before, I grew up in that area. I used to go to LBL almost every other weekend, man. Minimum once a month. So I too, I'm looking into campgrounds. Isn't Royce, Manchester pretty close to you guys? It's a Boy Scout camp. Gotcha. That's the app that I'm chasing down now. Is there's a pretty large Boy Scout camp that is pretty primitive. They've got pretty nice layout. There are some modern structures, but we can easily stay out of that side of the park. Even Esker, dude. Esker is a phenomenal, and I do mean it's a phenomenal location, great scenery. But they have two sides of the park. They have one side that's very primitive, a lot of trails, and then they've got the more modern facilities. So that's always something you're going to have to probably fight.
You're going to have to deal with it no matter what you do. I mean, there's going to be some sort of muggle or, it's not going to be total immersive. And if it is super immersive when you get there and you can just take over, it's going to be hella expensive. Yeah. So, you got to create it. And what a lot of folks get discouraged because they're like, oh, I don't have 50 people or 500 people or 5,000 people. I got 5 people. And that's what we want. We want you to start somewhere, just get out there and host an event. Do it at a local park. Don't spend 50,000 hours looking for this awesome location. If it's too big, you won't be able to use it anyway with your small group. Build the group first and find locations as you go. Play at your local park. I mean, that's it. I know Eek is beyond that. Eek is beyond that, and so is Ufnar. But
that I posted of our All Hallows Eve event, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, I mean, Eek can tell you, dude, it's actually a really nice park. There are some muggle sections, but it's very easy to stay in the woods out of sight. The only downside we really had was for our village setting, they had a porta potty set up. A lot of the videos I had to cut like half of the frame out, or the photos. I had to cut half the frame out because everybody was running past the porta potty. And it's because the community park was doing that hayride and they set up something. And ended up not even showing up that day, which really pissed me off.
Well, I think from a standpoint of this tavern talk, we can probably end it. So we can go into more of the Elder and stuff detail in a little bit here. But we thank you for joining us for Tavern Talk Season 4, Episode 1, about the rulebook and some of the changes that we had. It was the longest Tavern Talk to date. And thank you for very much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you in the scrolls and in the games.